Hi everybody. I'm making a video. It's my first video, and I'm making it because I feel like God gave me a new understanding of the 70 weeks of Daniel prophecy. Not necessarily different, but just sort of additional. So I'm going to share it with you, and you can decide for yourself. So in Daniel 9:24, Gabriel gives this message to Daniel. 70 weeks have been determined or decreed for your people in your holy city, and weeks being a septad, 7 year cluster, to finish the transgression, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. So you are to know and discern that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be built again with plaza and moat, even in times of distress. Then, after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing, and the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary, and its end will come with a flood. Even to the end there will be war. Desolations are determined. And he will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week, he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. And on the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate, even until a complete destruction. One that is decreed is poured out on the one who makes desolate. So Sir Robert Anderson, long time ago, calculated what he thought was the date of the triumphal entry. However, thanks to computers and technology, we can actually look and see what day this was, what day of the week. And it was a Wednesday. April 6th of 32 AD was a Wednesday. And we know that Jesus was crucified on a Wednesday, not a Friday, because he had to be in the grave for 3 days and 3 nights. And the Jewish days and nights are different than ours. You can go study it if you want. You don't have to agree with me, but that's what I believe. That's how I see it. So the triumphal entry is a Sunday. It's Palm Sunday, right? But April 6, 32 AD is a Wednesday. So instead of calculating to the triumphal entry, it's actually the very day that Jesus would be cut off or crucified, which is exactly what Daniel was told in verse 26. So now, to quote Sir Isaac Newton, we avoid also doing violence to the language of Daniel by taking the 7 weeks and 62 weeks for one number. Had that been Daniel's meaning, he would have said 60 and 9 weeks and not 7 weeks and 62 weeks, a way of numbering used by no nation. In our way, the years are Jewish lunisolar years, as they ought to be, and the 70 weeks of years are Jewish years ending with sabbatical years, which is very remarkable. For they end either with the year of the birth of Christ, 2 years before the vulgar account, or with the year of his death, or with the 7th year after it, all of which are sabbatical years. So while Isaac Newton, I don't believe, had everything right, but he didn't have the tools that we have today, he did get that right, that these are sabbatical years. These are the groups of 7, the Shemitah. If you don't know about the Shemitah, go look up Jonathan Cahn and the Shemitah, Shemitah. Very interesting stuff. Now, my issue is this, and it was Isaac Newton's issue too. Why did Gabriel word it like that? Why 7 and 62? Obviously, from the decree to rebuild and restore Jerusalem in 445 BC to the Messiah the Prince being cut off, there were exactly 69 septads or weeks, and it's 173,882 days. I mean, plus or minus 2. Come on, that's a great margin of error. So here's the snippet from Daniel 9 again. Go ahead and pause it if you want to read it again. I'm not going to read it. But why was it worded like that? I just spent a few hours trying to make it work with only 62 weeks, but I realized that that was a mistake because it's actually two different prophecies wrapped up in one. And I'll show you a visual in a minute. But from the decree to rebuild Jerusalem to the Messiah being cut off is 62 weeks, or 69 total. But it says 62 weeks, which is kind of confusing. It seems that the timeline for the 70 weeks doesn't have the same start date as the timeline for the Messiah. So in verse 25 it says, "So you are to know and discern that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It, Jerusalem, will be built again with plaza and moat, even in times of distress." So from the decree to rebuild Jerusalem to the finishing of rebuilding Jerusalem took 49 years or 7 septads. I don't have any links to that, but it seems to be generally understood. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but better scholars than me have figured that out, so I'm just going to roll with it. So that would be the first 7 of the 7 and 62 for a total of 69. I don't think the clock for the 70 weeks started at the decree. I think the clock started when Jerusalem was finished. This is giving the timeline to the Messiah being cut off, but the overall prophecy is the full 70 weeks in scope. That interpretation makes the next part make sense. From the rebuilding of Jerusalem to the Messiah being cut off was 62 septads. That's what it says, 62 weeks. That's the 62 of the 7 and 62 for a total of 69. The time count, the time count stopped when the Messiah was killed, making the timeline set forth by Sir Robert Anderson correct. But the scriptures don't say after the 69 weeks the Messiah will be cut off. It says that after the 62 weeks he will be cut off. 62 of the total of 70 decreed for the people of Jerusalem to make an end to sin and all that. So, even to the end, desolations are determined and war, and, that just hasn't happened yet. So, therefore, only 62 of the 70 weeks have passed, as determined for Jerusalem and her people, to finish the transgression, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place, which has not happened. So, that would mean we have 8 more septads to come, not just the final one, but I'll show you that in a second. We all know of the final one, the 70th week, which is to be the tribulation period, or the time of Jacob's trouble, with the last half of it being the Great Tribulation. The clock was stopped when Jesus was killed on both timelines. The one we just discussed with Sir Robert Anderson, the 69 weeks, and the one that I'm proposing. The clock stopped when Jesus was killed. The Messiah was cut off. And then Jerusalem was utterly destroyed. And it was destroyed for like 2,000 years until recently. But the prophecy stated, "So you are to know and discern that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be built again, blah, blah, blah." The Messiah came, but was cut off from achieving his throne as ruler and King of Kings and reigning from Jerusalem. We all know that that happened. From the time Jerusalem was reoccupied to the time Jesus was killed was 62 weeks, or septads. Then Jerusalem was laid waste. Sir Isaac Newton knew that there was to be a second rising of Israel, a second and final rebuilding of Jerusalem. You can go look online, just search for Sir Isaac Newton Bible commentary, and you can read all of this. I'm not going to read it all, but he said, if all these old guys applied that last 7.5 to the times of the Antichrist, why may not we, by the same liberty of interpretation, apply the 7 weeks to the time when Antichrist shall be destroyed by the brightness of Christ's coming? Which is my question too. So, when Jerusalem was repopulated, or when was Jerusalem repopulated by the Jewish people for a second time? June 7th, 1967. That's when they captured Jerusalem, or recaptured it. That would begin the countdown to the final week, that 70th week. From the decree to rebuild Jerusalem, there would be 7 and 62 septads. Well, the 62 have been fulfilled. Now we must look for the fulfillment of the 8 remaining. From June 7th, 1967, if you count 7 Jewish septads, or 17,640 days, their years are 360 days, you come to September 23rd, 2015, and I'll show you that. Oh, wait, right here. So, June 7th, 1967, add 17,640 days, calculate the date, September 23rd, 2015. Okay, that's the 7 septad, and then there's 1 remaining. Get back to, okay. Is there anything significant about that day? Why, yes. September 23rd, 2015 is the Day of Atonement, the very day that proclaims the Jubilee year that's coming from September 2015 to September 2016. This Jubilee is also year 1 of the next septad that will begin the 70th week of Daniel. So we're in a Shemitah year right now at the end of one of the septads, the 69th septad. But the 70th week of Daniel will begin on September 23rd, 2015. That's how I understand it. You can argue with me, whatever. Now, I hear everyone saying, but no one knows the day or the hour. So, I'm not even going to go there. That is pertaining to the rapture. No one knows the day or hour of the rapture. That's true. I mean, even among Christians, you'll find so many arguments. Nobody knows anything. Not day, hour, year, minute. Nobody knows anything. I'm a pre-trib rapture person. I believe that God's not going to beat up his bride before he comes and delivers his wrath. That's just my take on it. Many, many people have different views, mid-trib, post-trib, all that. I'm not going to diss any of that. You don't have to agree with me. But especially if you don't believe that you're going to be taken out of here before the wrath, this is especially important because it seems like it's coming this September. So, if what I've explained here is true, then the tribulation begins on the Day of Atonement of this year. Daniel 9 seems to be a two-part prophecy, one about the first coming of the Messiah, one about the second coming, and only time will tell if my theory is correct. So, September 24th, 25th, nothing happens, then I was wrong, and that's fine. I'm fine with that. So here's the visual that I want to share with you. And the verse is over here to the right, and I've color-coded it. The green is about his second coming, partly his first and second, and this blue is specifically about his first coming. So here I've listed the years, 1 through 70, or the years of septad. So number 1 is 7 years, and then there's 7 and 62 septads or weeks. So from the decree to rebuild Jerusalem would be Messiah the Prince, and he would be cut off. So 445 BC starts the clock for Messiah the Prince to come. So then 7 septads or 49 years later, Jerusalem's finished. And then, time goes on. Jesus comes. He's crucified or cut off on April 6th, 32 AD. Just don't even argue about the date. It doesn't even matter. Give or take, whatever. We all know that around that time, Jesus was crucified and cut off. And then the clock stops. And there's the church age. So, and during that time, Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 AD. Leaving one, that's the future. Now, this is the most widely held view. I've never heard of what I'm presenting. If someone else has presented it, I haven't seen it, but great, I agree with you. So here is my take on it. That was for the Messiah to come. This was to give people a chance to know the time of their visitation because he was holding them responsible for that. They were to know and understand. He even said it. You are to know and discern. So that they didn't is why blindness was pronounced upon Israel for only a time. It's coming. It's going to be lifted. Praise God. But here we go. So the issuing of the decree did not start the 70 weeks. The Jewish people coming back to Jerusalem after the Babylonian captivity, that started the clock for the 70 weeks appointed for the people and the holy city. So the holy city wasn't in existence for that first 7. Now it is. Okay, so the clock starts. Jerusalem finished. The 70 weeks start now. So we go. Okay, Jesus is crucified after the 62 septads, just like it says, 7 and 62. There's 7 and 62 over here for a total of 69. Here we're going to flip it, 62 and 7. So after the 62, which is what it says, after the 62 weeks, Messiah will be cut off. It didn't say 69, it said 62. That's because it's counting from the start of the 70 weeks, not from the time to know. So anyway, Jerusalem finished, starts the clock. After 62 of those weeks, Jesus is crucified. The clock stops. Okay, you see how that lines up? 69, 62, Jesus crucified, cut off. The clock stops. Jerusalem destroyed, 70 AD. And then there's this, there's this parentheses, just like in Revelation, there's a parentheses, there's 6 and then a pause, and then the 7th judgment comes. It's kind of the same as that, right? But we're talking about the 70 weeks now. So the clock restarted when Jerusalem was reoccupied June 7th, 1967. From the decree, there will be 7 and 62. So there was a decree in 445 BC. There's 62 weeks from the time Jerusalem was reoccupied to the time it was destroyed. And then in 1967, Jerusalem's rebuilt, but there's still 8 septads left. Okay? So if we count 49 years, right, that would land on September 23rd, 2015, proclaiming Jubilee. Okay, Jubilee is coming. That means, I believe, that the Jewish people will probably win the Psalm 83 war. The Psalm 83 war, I believe, comes first. We might even see it before we get raptured out of here. Traditionally, they've reclaimed something. 1917, the Balfour Declaration gave Israel a homeland. 1967, 50 years later, they get Jerusalem back. Well, now 2015, 2016, what's going to happen then? Who knows? That's pretty interesting to see what's going to happen. They'll definitely get land back if it follows the pattern, and most likely will rebuild their temple. And if it's starting the tribulation period, that has to happen. The temple must be rebuilt. So makes sense. Because halfway through, the new temple will be defiled and Jerusalem will be abandoned by the Jews if they listen to him and what he warned them for. So the Antichrist will rule until Jesus, Messiah the Prince, comes and sits on the throne. So this is for a total of 70 septads. So I believe that the Daniel 9 prophecy is 2 prophecies in one, not just one about the Messiah coming and being cut off and then, some distant, vague, ethereal future, it's going to start up again. There has to be a start and a stop that is recognizable and that we can understand. And this seems to be it. Jerusalem being occupied by the Jewish people, by Israel. That's what starts the clock. Jesus' death, the Messiah crucified, that stopped the clock. But it starts again when Jerusalem's reoccupied. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share. I don't want to argue. Debate is fine. Friendly debate, that's fine. You don't have to agree with me. This is just what I'm presenting. This is what I feel that I was given. And to warn people that, hey, it's about to start. Stuff is about to happen. I think everyone can see that September is going to be a huge, huge time for the world. And, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. That's fine. I just wanted to present this, to be a watchman, to get the word out, so that you can know and I wouldn't be held responsible for not sharing what I was given. So anyway, God bless. If I can stop this, that would be great.